Hello and welcome to PopNerdery, the show that is nerdier than asking a girl to prom on your TI-83. This is the place where you're allowed to have an opinion on anything nerdy in pop culture, but you gotta have more than just a little bit to say. We'll pick out some of the highlights that have us talking this week and spit out some flaming hot takes for you. If this is your first time joining us, welcome. I'm your host, Brent, and I have a full roster of media hounds here to help me dive into some fun topics. Dave, welcome to PopNerdery Podcast number 1, buddy.
Hi, Brent. How are you?
I'm pretty damn spiffy. How are you?
This is fantastic. I'm really excited. We don't really talk about things other than Star Wars or Batman on this thing, right?
Well, I would say most of it will devolve into Star Wars or Batman comparisons, at least. I also have my friend and constituent, Topher.
Hey, Brett. I'm here stretching into this new podcast like a new pair of pants, just like your favorite rapper's favorite blogger ought to.
This does kind of feel like the first day. It feels like when you pull your jeans right out of the dryer. That's what this feels like right now.
I know they'll eventually. They're just a little warm. The button's a little hot. Thighs are a little snug. But I know we're gonna stretch right into these things. We got a lot of housekeeping to take care of here.
There you go.
You can follow us on Twitter at PopNerdery, PopNerdery. You can also find us at the website PopNerdery.com. To listen to the podcast, you got a couple different options. First one is in your iTunes. Type in the PopNerderies in the search box. Bango, bingo, bongo, there we are. The other way is to call Dave, and Dave will actually come over to your house and just stand behind you while you're typing, and he'll just talk over your shoulder. We prefer the iTunes method simply because of repeatability. However, Dave will come to your house and podcast live behind you.
I do that. These guys don't even know what a microphone is. I came and I set it up right at their house for them.
And we appreciate you for that.
Ow! All right, so our first segment, new listeners, is we're going to talk about what's been going on in the world of nerd culture, pop culture, technology, whatever the fuck we feel like at any given time. So first up this week, like I said, we're mainly going to focus on Star Wars and Batman because that's what happens. The first thing this week that I want to talk about with you guys, and we're going to have to stay pretty surface level because I know you guys haven't gotten to it yet, but the very first post-Return of the Jedi and pre-Force Awakens materials were released. So I'm referencing Star Wars Aftermath by Chuck Wendig. That's a novel. And Star Wars Shattered Empire, I think that's Greg Rucka, and I can't remember the name of the artist right off the top of my head at the moment. But that is a comic series that's going to be published in trade paperback in November. So that's when that one will wrap up. But both of those were released this week, so we're really getting into the home stretch of things prior to Star Wars The Force Awakens. First off, are you guys excited to get some post-Return of the Jedi story?
I am. I'm feeling very gun-shy about Star Wars. I feel a little bit like an abused pet. Like I've been kicked down the stairs a couple times in quick succession here, and I don't really want to go near the stairs again. I know you're telling me there's a treat at the bottom, but I just don't know that I want. So, I am. In concept, that sounds great. I'm so worried about the execution of any Star Wars property at this point that I'm hesitant.
Yeah. So I will be a little bit more. I will be a little bit more positive than that, just because I have kind of delved a little bit. The comics that have been released since they announced the new canon, they've released the Star Wars comic series, the Vader Star Wars series. I did not do anything with the Lando series or the Leia series, but the Star Wars and Vader series were interesting. I'll stop short of using the word compelling because nothing's really been game-changing with that stuff. We'll try to avoid spoilers, but one thing, it's not much of a spoiler. It is a spoiler, but it doesn't really change much, is in one of the most recent issues of the Star Wars comic, Mon Mothma, who's the character from Return of the Jedi, was referred to as the Chancellor.
Yeah.
So I picked up on that, assuming that there was that structure of kind of a new republic. And for those that aren't familiar, the Star Wars series actually takes place right after Episode 4, A New Hope, the very first movie that came out in 1977. So, from a chronological standpoint, that's kind of interesting because it was never really referenced in the movies. But it's that type of thing that I think they're going to be ironing out in books like Aftermath and stuff, where it's, giving us high level, this is what the galaxy's kind of makeup was. And that's kind of what I'm most hopeful for. I shared with some friends over text a little while ago how, I'd almost want something like this. Since they did away with all the extended universe stuff, I'd almost want something like this to read as nonfiction. I'd almost want it to be the type of thing that said, here are major plot points in the story of this galaxy after Return of the Jedi. But I don't know if that's the most compelling storytelling.
So I have a couple things. One, let's be real. If people don't know who Mon Mothma is, they're probably listening to the wrong show.
No. If they don't know, then they just need to go pop in a VHS of Return of the Jedi now and then turn the podcast back on.
Two, I think that the thing that separates the comic series that you talked about and the two that were just released this week is the timing of them. So you mentioned that those stories take place between episodes 4 and 5. I think the most interesting thing for me is that Aftermath does take place after Jedi. We had a bunch of post-Jedi stories that are extended universe. Those are no longer canon, obviously. They're now called Legends series. But these new stories are the first glimpses of what we're going to get in Force Awakens. So I did read Aftermath. I was on my honeymoon, so I was able to put down at least one book.
Super impressive, by the way.
I know. I was gone for 8 days, managed one 360-page book.
Slow clap.
I just mean that your now newly minted wife, was not upset with you reading a book. I mean, that means you've selected correct.
Point of order: he was in a separate country, so that might have had something to do with this.
Then his wife? That's not much of a honeymoon.
Right. That's why he finished a book.
No, same country. She just likes to take a lot of naps, so I was able to put that book down during nap time.
It was porn that you're pulling out secretly. You're like, oh, she's asleep. Star Wars.
So Aftermath, this is what I'm trying to say.
Did you just make a lightsaber noise as you opened the book?
This guy's nerdy.
Aftermath was good enough for me to forego nap time. I will say that. So I'm going to stay fairly high level because I do want you both to read this fairly quickly so that I can talk about it with you with full spoilers. But my quick review of Aftermath is I liked it. It started off very slow, and there were a lot of characters that were included that I wasn't sure if they were going to pay off. I wasn't sure who was important, who wasn't important. Especially with Star Wars, you get names of characters that are sometimes difficult to remember, and you also get names of species and names of guns and names of ships and names of blah-de-blah-de-blah-de-blah. So that was a little bit difficult at the beginning of it, was to figure out who was important and who wasn't. By the end, I did really like it. I think it set a good stage for what is going to be called the Aftermath trilogy. So there are going to be 3 books. I don't know what the release schedule of them is. Maybe there's one that'll get released before 7, one that'll get released before 8, and one that'll get released before 9. As far as I know, they're all supposed to take place in that gulf between Jedi and Force Awakens. But it set up some pretty cool stuff, and it left you with some pretty interesting questions at the end to see, which of these characters are going to pull forward into Force Awakens, if any. You're not sure if any of them do, other than, Han, Chewie, Luke, Leia. They do make appearances in these short little interludes that they have, which would serve as what Brent is kind of asking for. It shows you what's going on at different planets in the galaxy, which is kind of cool. But yeah, there is one character that is introduced very early on. She's the main character of the book. Her name is Nora Wexley. She's a rebel pilot, and I'm really crossing my fingers that she is the main character of Rogue One. That they're introducing a character in this book that will then be, a main character of one of these anthology films. What I hope for from these books, from these comics, is getting characters and events that are going to be important but not necessary for the movie.
So yeah, that kind of leads into some of my thoughts on this. So again, the opposite of Toph, I am excited about them, and I'll probably digest a lot of them. But what I think ultimately is best for the franchise, best for Disney, best for Lucasfilm, whatever, is that, these novels or these comics only enrich the story for the people that have read it, and not become like such a necessary prologue for the films for it to be, still enjoyable. And ultimately, if we're looking back on the prequel trilogy, that's what those films ended up kind of becoming, was the unnecessary prologue in a sense. And we're not here to drag the prequels through the mud, because that's certainly been done enough.
Yes, we 100%.
I mean, I'm pretty sure that's why we created the show.
Fuck.
Okay. All right. Well, so this is a 2-hour podcast then tonight,
Yeah.
or
No.
Okay, perfect. No, honestly though, the opportunity that they have, having an entire story team at Lucasfilm designing all this at one time gives them a fantastic opportunity to, as you mentioned, introduce characters that are going to be names that we're familiar with, who play into this bigger narrative that can then go have these spin-off films or go have these spin-off novels that all enrich the world of the rebellion, the Empire, the Resistance, the First Order, etc., because that really makes for compelling storytelling if, I recognize that all these things are interwoven, but it's not the tried and true method of that's his son or that's her mom thing that sometimes can happen a little bit too frequently. And this kind of speaks to some of my bigger thoughts on this sequel trilogy that's going to be coming out over the next 6 years. It's super important for me that they have mapped out, or it's at least based off what's reported, it seems that they have mapped out the major plot points of episode 7, 8, and 9 already, because that's going to be something that I think we all are craving, is this story that has basically been ironed out, and we just don't know how to get from A to B to C to D, because that makes for more compelling character stories and character arcs. It makes for way more compelling villain arcs, which is one of the things I'm most excited about with this new trilogy and curious to see how they handle. Because if all 3 or 4 of these major baddies that are kind of already named in The Force Awakens are dead by the end of episode 7 or dead within the first 10 minutes of episode 8, as they were in the prequel trilogies, I will be severely disappointed.
Yeah. I think what you want is stories of consequence, right? And I want the main legacy characters from the original trilogy. I want them to have an important role, but I also want this to be a trilogy that stands on its own, which is the problem of the prequel trilogy. It did not stand on its own. You needed those other 3 films in order to give any bit of a shit about the prequel trilogy. So I think we've done enough Star Wars for one evening, and I'm sure we'll bring it back a little bit later. But from Star Wars to Batman, Zack Snyder this last week, he came out after some rumors hit the web, talking about how Batman v Superman is a lot more Batman heavy than you might think. Originally, Batman v Superman was slated to be the Man of Steel sequel, and now obviously we all know that they're using it to introduce a lot of the Justice League and give the backstory for this Batman, the new Batfleck. In addition, this is something we haven't talked about with the 3 of us, but they're setting up 3 Batman solo films that Affleck will direct and star in. And I believe they're slated to be written by Chris Terrio, guy who wrote Argo, guy who's writing Batman v Superman. So this is one, I'm just going to say good. Okay, great. We all have differing thoughts on Man of Steel, but we all know that it's very difficult to make a Superman movie that is compelling. So watching him get punched in the face by Batman, great. Having a lot of the backstory and the story structure of this movie ride on fantastic, burly bat shoulders is something that I'm looking forward to.
I think that one of the things I'm most excited about is that we're getting multiple films after this one, which means that you can't just drop the thing off a cliff like they have a tendency to do with some of these Superman movies. I think we all agree that Superman is some kind of demigod who murdered innocent people, and as such should be immediately put down by the goddamn Batman, like the rabid dog that he is. So, I'm pro more Superman in this getting face punched. Like, I don't know where I go to vote for that, if I need to, tear off box tops and send them in to Zack Snyder or collect Pepsi points or whatever it is that results in more face punching. I'm in favor of it.
I think you accrue the points by using your Bat credit card from Batman Forever, right? Okay. Or Batman and Robin.
I was from Batman and Robin, and we don't ever speak of that. You know that. You know that rule. We have one rule about Batman. It's we don't ever speak about that.
The actual credit card has nipples, right?
Yeah. I don't leave home without it.
Mm-hmm. Holy Rusted Island Batman.
What?
Jesus. But I think I'm very excited, and this is something that has been discussed ad nauseum, and rightfully so, is that a lot of us are very sick of the backstory of, inventing every character every 3 years or 3 movies or whatever it is. So hopefully the fact that we're kind of launching Batman versus Superman in the middle of a story and getting movies after that means that we can keep progressing the character, which would make me very, very excited. Because, there's only so much fan service to specific comics that I want. Like Dave and I have both discussed, there's, scenes pulled directly out of kind of landmark books straight into the movies, and it's always very fun to see those. But it also, after a while, kind of gets boring because I've already read the story. I'm ready for the story to progress. That's the kind of the whole idea behind it.
Pearls? Do you want to see some pearls?
Crime Alley? Can we? Please?
Yeah. So I think as Gotham is telling us, we don't need to see pre-Batman.
No.
It's not necessary. Gotham is actually the prequels it's the prequel movies of the Batman universe. It is god-awful. It is terrible.
I don't ever really need to see it again. So for me, Batman versus Superman, I'm excited for it. I'll watch it. But I'm truly actually far more excited for the Batfleck. Are we going with Batfleck? Is that what we have as a culture have decided that Batfleck is a thing?
Sure. I mean, until he gives us something in the movie that we can actually talk about.
All right. Well, I'll roll with Batfleck then. As long as he swears an oath to never do a Batman voice, then he has my support for president. That's what we're talking about, right? Where this is who we're voting for president, Batman?
Yeah. I mean,
yeah. Me, and I think listeners, you'll come to find very quickly that I'm nowhere near the Batman aficionado as my two colleagues here. But having just gotten a chance finally to watch Gone Girl, I'm totally content with Affleck at the helm of Batman. Mm-hmm. I just want character film. At the end of the day, that's why the Marvel films work. That's why so many of the DC films have flopped. And if it's not a character film and it's not, as you guys are mentioning, telling stories that are unique and driving the character forward, it's going to end up in the same situation with a one-way ticket to burning dumpster fire island, right?
Yeah. There are a couple of things.
Never forget.
He was. There are a couple of things that make me nervous about these movies. The main one is, and Brent, you mentioned this earlier, is that these movies most of the time are only as good as their villains. And from what we've seen of the Joker, I am terrified that they have fucked up the main Batman villain for this universe. But again, I haven't seen it, so I'm going to go ahead and give it the benefit of the doubt until I do.
But especially after such an iconic performance that really gained the entire world a little bit of clout. I think that would be a shame to fail that character.
And I think the main problem that I have with it is, from what I've seen of the performance in the Suicide Squad trailer, the performance could be great. I mean, I don't really have too much of a problem with Jared Leto, but the character design of almost everyone in Suicide Squad is kind of terrifying to me. But yeah, so there's that. They really can't screw up, let's say, for example, very key characters like Commissioner Gordon or Dick Grayson or Tim Drake. If those people, if their backstories are really bad, or they've killed them off screen, or whatever the case has happened, it's going to make it really difficult, and they're really going to have a hurdle to jump when these solo films come out.
Well, it's the same thing that we just touched on a moment ago, in so much as the reason we don't want to see the backstory is also my same frustration with doing characters over and over again. This will be our, if you count the TV show, 5th incarnation of the Joker in a live-action portrayal, and I'm just not sure that at some point, the Batman universe is filled with awesome villains. It's also filled with terrible villains. So, I don't know that I need Egghead ever again, but...
The Clock King?
Yeah, there's a lot of bad in there. However...
Calendar Man?
Yeah, there's also, some that are good. So let's maybe give one of those a shot. I think that, Danny DeVito's Penguin still is my favorite Batman villain of all time because it gave me nightmares as a kid.
He was kind of terrifying to a child.
Oh, God, yes. The flipper fingers and the fish biting and the nose biting and the whole thing. Yeah, it really ruined Danny DeVito for me in a wonderful way. And no matter what I see him in now, I'm still just like, congratulations, you're going to bite someone's nose. Don't get too close.
That is definitely not a movie that you would think would have Happy Meal toys, right? All right, so let's move on from the Bat. I'm sure we could talk about him for a while, and we will for many, many episodes to come. I got a couple of quick hits. I can't stop looking at the burning dumpster fire that is this Fantastic Four movie.
Dave.
I can't stop. This
is an intervention. This is an intervention for you. We're actually not recording a podcast. Brett and I just want you to stop self-harming with Fantastic Four. That's all this is. It's a super elaborate intervention.
So let me get this out.
Even talking about Fantastic Four is the same as just like cut marks on your arm.
Let me get this out.
We love you, Dave. We love you. Please stop.
The movie's producer came out this week and said that despite the horrific box office totals, I think it made roughly
$8.
Yeah, $8. It made $8 in the domestic box office. 20th Century Fox is still working on a sequel to this movie. Still thinks that somewhere out there was a good version of this movie, and it fell through their finger like a wisp of something. Also,
great analogy.
Also, he let slip, or the stars let slip, that Kate Mara and Miles Teller, the actor and actress that played Mr. and Mrs. Fantastic, haven't even bothered to see the movie.
Why would they? They were there for filming it. They know how shit it is. Fuck it.
Oh, my goodness.
But they said this in public. They said, listen.
What an indictment.
Yeah.
So here's my thing, guys. This is the last time I'm going to talk about Fantastic Four until my wonderful fantasy comes to life. All I'm hoping for is I'm hoping that someone at 20th Century Fox wises up and they pull the Spider-Man model and they say, all right, we're going to allow Marvel Studios to reboot, yet again, the Fantastic Four, introduce them into a Marvel Studios movie, and then co-produce a solo film. Not a solo film, but a Fantastic Four film with Marvel Studios. Let them do the story. I think that if this were to happen, you could get a quality movie, and I know you guys disagree with me on this.
Spider-Man and Fantastic Four are boat anchors that you want to wrap around our necks and sink all comic book movies for the next decade. We have a good thing going. Good thing going. Don't fuck this up. Yes, Suicide Squad looks like it's a big bag of assholes, but for the most part, Avengers was good. Don't fuck this up by putting the shit all over it.
I really do think that you can make good movies from those franchises, and honestly, I want Marvel to have their shot. I want those characters to be in the Marvel universe. So here's my fantasy. Now that Kevin Feige reports directly to the head of Disney and has all of the money at his disposal, because the head of Disney is the guy who spent $4 billion to buy Star Wars and I think they did the same thing with, what was the other franchise? $4 billion for Star Wars and
Marvel?
They
Pixar?
whatever. Anyways, so anyways, he has all the money, right? Feige has all the money. Wouldn't you guys want to see a Fantastic Four movie directed by Steven Spielberg?
No.
Fuck you. Fuck you. You definitely do. You definitely do. Didn't you grow up as an Amblin child?
Don't you want to see a Fantastic Four movie blank? My answer is no.
Take your black heart and peel back the layers and remember what it was like to watch E.T. Now imagine that level of movie with Steven Spielberg as the director.
What makes you think that a short, fat alien with a big head is going to make that movie any better?
I'm not saying you put E.T. in Fantastic Four.
I take it back. You know what, Dave? I want to see the E.T. Fantastic Four movie. That's the only version I want to see.
Yeah, that's compelling.
E.T. fights the Fantastic Four.
His little finger lights up, and then all of a sudden, those are the cosmic rays that affect the Fantastic Four with their powers.
Just eating Reese's Pieces all over the fucking place.
Alien. No.
Yeah, okay, so you asked the question, wouldn't I want to see a Fantastic Four movie directed by Steven Spielberg? I won't address
it's
that.
It's his cousin, and it's not nearly as good. If it does Spielberg, I felt that I was on the box. It is not the same thing. It's bullshit.
Okay. Truth be told, I wasn't super excited about any Avengers stories. I will be upfront about that. The only Marvel property I've ever really followed and been excited about is X-Men. And Fox has had their peaks and valleys with that franchise. When Marvel took over, first thing that came out, I think, was Hulk. The Edward Norton Hulk. And then they did some Iron Man, so it took a little bit of time. And then everything has been hit after hit after hit after hit. If Marvel got their hands on any of the properties that, they think work in this realm, I absolutely can get on board, because I look at Guardians of the Galaxy, and even people that follow comics were kind of going, why? Why what? And then it was fantastic. So yes, I will be willing to say, for the sake of comedy, if Disney got their hands on any one of the, kind of tragically redheaded stepchildren storylines.
Wait, why are they redheaded stepchildren? Haven't they had 8 shots at this? This is not Guardians of the Galaxy getting its little bit of limelight. This has been done again and again and again, and they all fucking suck.
The issue is that they have not been done well, and frankly, they're not compelling stories.
Correct.
That's the issue.
This is also why the Thor movies aren't good. I mean, you said that Marvel's had nothing but hits, but in reality, the first Thor movie is fine, and the second one is pretty bad.
The second one wasn't very good.
No, so it's not. There's no sauce on it that just goes Marvel, Disney, and it's awesome. It still needs to be compelling, and I think fundamentally that's not a compelling movie.
I think the character of Thor isn't that compelling, but you can tell based on some of the context of some of the other movies that the Galaxy stuff is about to hit. So that's why you're invested in Thor.
Well, and I think he's great in the Avengers. It's just a solo picture.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Thor 2, there's so much other stuff going on that's impacting the galaxy, and you recognize that role that it's playing in the greater narrative.
For sure.
That it's fun.
Yeah. So last thing I'll say about it is I think if they did something similar to Spider-Man, where they introduced them in, let's say, Infinity War, when they're already going to be out in the galaxy someplace, and they introduce this time-displaced family that's from the 1950s, so you can play it hokey like that, and it's a family story with adults that care about each other, that are already established, I think it could work if you got the right director. Anyhow, to show you guys that we are general nerds, movie nerds, not just comic book character nerds, Star Wars nerds, I do want to talk a little bit about the new Steve Jobs movie. I know that there was an Ashton Kutcher movie that came out, but I don't think anyone speaks of that. This Steve Jobs trailer was released. It stars Michael Fassbender, written by Aaron Sorkin, directed by Danny Boyle, And after the festivals that I've been at, the critics are just sucking this thing's dick. Like, no joke. This thing is going to get super Oscar buzz. It is going to be one of the most well-reviewed movies of the year. And I'm curious, is this something that excites you? Are biopics something that excite you guys?
I love biopics in the same way that I love reading biographies. I'm going to be honest, the first time I saw this trailer, I was like, why is the Ashton Kutcher movie being re-released? I had no idea it was a separate movie. So there's that problem. And then the second thing is, I read the book. I don't really need to see another Steve Jobs movie. And I say this as someone who is talking on a MacBook, looking at his iPhone while a football game streams through my Apple TV. So it's not like I didn't drink the Kool-Aid.
Yeah. I'm a big Aaron Sorkin guy, so I will literally see anything he makes, and I'll probably rewatch it a bunch of times. I was one of the. I mean, I know this movie got a lot of Oscar buzz and a lot of critics liked it, but I'm a huge fan of Social Network. A Few Good Men is one of my favorite movies. West Wing, etc., etc., etc. But this is something that I'm really excited about, and I don't think there are too many other fall prestige pictures that I'm excited about. I think the one with Johnny Depp looks terrible, the Whitey Bulger movie.
Black Mass, take it back.
Yeah, I think that looks bad.
Oh, you're the worst.
What else? Are there any kind of prestige movies that you guys are excited about this fall?
Yes, Black Mass.
You are excited about that movie?
Yes, 100%.
It looks
and
like...
it's getting reviewed better than the Jobs movie is.
It looks like dopey Boston accents done by dopey Johnny Depp.
Johnny Depp's accent is fantastic, first and foremost. You're a war criminal. It's Cumberbatch's that I'm actually super interested to see, because that dude is British as the day is long and a pinky out on a cup of tea. And
did you just pronounce it cum on her back? Because it did not sound like Cumberbatch.
I thought it was Cumberbatch.
Eggs Benedict cum on her back. What? What part? Yep. I'm sorry. It's British, Brent. I'm sorry that it's a culture that you're unfamiliar with.
It's British.
Okay? They don't speak the same language we do. Dick.
It's like Smithwick's, okay? Read a book.
Read a book, bitch. Have a Guinness and sit down and take a deep breath, all right? Don't worry about it.
Oh, boy.
But yes, Black Mass is going to be fantastic, and you're a bad person.
There's a bunch of fall movies I'm interested in, and I think we probably ought to save them because there's some excitement building in me for The Martian, for The Hateful Eight, the Tarantino film. So
when is Jungle Book coming out?
Yeah, okay, that's one of the ones that I'm super excited about, but I do not think it is this fall.
Okay,
I believe it's...
Put those back in your pocket. And we're going to touch on one more topic here.
Yeah. Yes. Actually, I think we already did a really nice job talking about the Marvel Universe. We'll save this. We'll put it in our pocket for another time. So right now, Friends of Friends. What is that? That's a Thundercats thing. Friends of Friends.
Thundercats.
Fearless whatevers. True Believers, as Stanley would say. Right now, we're going to take a break, and we'll be right back.
All right, so welcome back to Popnerdery Podcast. Here in our second topic, we're going to go a little deep. We're going to slide under the covers. We're going to snuggle up, and we're going to get deep into one of the topics that we're all interested in discussing this week, which was I was horrified to find out that an unnamed member of this podcast didn't like an unnamed movie Blade Runner when he saw it, and it really I'm going to be serious. It shook our friendship to the very core. It was a difficult time. Through some therapy, we've gotten through it. However, it brought about the discussion, what is the appropriate age to see a great movie? Or, vice versa, what is the wrong age to do it? There are a lot of obvious examples, like if you're shown a horror movie as a child, it's probably going to be a lot more impactful because it's terrifying. For instance, I saw Silence of the Lambs, way too young, and I actually haven't been able to rewatch it because I might wet the bed. I'm not willing to go back into those repressed places anymore.
He just means more than normal. He might wet the bed more than normal.
Well, yeah, we just blame that on Miller Lite normally. But, this is like I did it on purpose out of terror as opposed to way too much beer. One of the other ones that's really specific in my mind is that I saw Live and Let Die was the first Bond film I ever saw, which has Robert Moore, who was Roger Moore's younger, less handsome brother, and he was really bad. That was a direct-to-video. And then I saw the real one with Roger Moore, and it's still not very good.
Also terrible.
Kid, he Dukes it hazards a car through the swamp with like a country sheriff, and he's riding boats, and there's voodoo, and like I really liked it. And I was like, Roger Moore's the quintessential Bond. And my dad was like, these are okay, but like let me show you Connery. And I was like, Connery is an old stupid man, and your videos are dumb. Go away. And A Spy Who Loved Me and Live and Let Die are going to be over here being awesome Bond movies. And it was probably like a good 3 or 4 years until I saw Goldfinger and some of the other, good Bond movies, and I was like, oh shit, what have I been doing for the past 3 years? Why did I watch these out of order? Because while they're totally enjoyable, showing a kid, it's like showing a kid the Star Wars prequels first. Like, just don't set them up for later disappointment. It's kind of similar to, I went back and watched The Goonies the other day with my child, and I turned it off about halfway through because I was just like, this is dumb. This is not what I wanted it to be. It's not the movie I saw in my childhood. So, Brent, you recently watched Blade Runner.
Yeah, and this stuff is important to me because I'm a guy who's claiming I can host a podcast called PopNerdery, and yet there are still like fundamental kind of cult nerd sci-fi or even like Hollywood prestigious films that I haven't seen, and I don't like my movie resume to have those empty spaces. So Blade Runner was a film that contextually I know a lot about, but I'd never actually sat and watched. And it was a situation where I wanted to have the experience that everybody else had, and I came away knowing that I didn't have that experience. It started off fine where it didn't, there are movies that were made a long time ago that you can just automatically tell were made a long time ago, and it's distracting. I didn't necessarily get that from Blade Runner, even though you can tell some of the special effects are outdated and, some of the near future technology was wrong, etc. But I was able to look past all that, which was the important part for me, and I just was able to look at the story as, as a story and context of, how the characters grew, etc. And I came away at the end just not understanding why that movie has had or continues to have the buzz that it has.
I think that also partially Blade Runner holds up really well because, just like you were saying, a lot of the effects are practically done. I think that we're going to see some of the stuff in our, Dave's 8 years old, so this isn't going to hit for him, but our middle school, early high school years, they were just chock filled with CGI, and we were like, this is amazing. And you go back and watch it again, and you're like, oh, holy shit, this looks fucking terrible. Blade Runner doesn't have that because it has a ton of practical effects to it. So in that aspect, it holds up really, really well, simply because it doesn't look, there's some stuff that just, like you were saying, the near future technology doesn't hold up, but visually it doesn't take you out of the story in the way, I watched The Matrix recently, and the CGI in that is so bad that it took me out of a story that I actually really enjoy.
Yeah, I think I had the opposite, and to throw out another movie that has a lot of practical effects that is still watchable is the original versions of the original trilogy. Obviously, a lot of practical effects, so you can tell that Yoda's a puppet, but
sure,
it's still fully watchable. But I had the opposite with Blade Runner, where I saw it when I was way too young. So that means, one, I saw the wrong version, right? I didn't see the correct, as quote unquote, nerds would put it. I did not see the correct version, which is the director's cut.
Right.
So I saw the wrong version, one. Also, I saw it directly after, I had seen the original trilogy of Star Wars and Raiders for the first time.
Ooh.
So I'm expecting Han Solo to be running around and, Chewie to be there and him to be hitting things with a bullwhip.
Right.
And that's not what Blade Runner is, obviously. It's a different movie with a different tone, and I saw it way too young for me to enjoy it and for me to really catch it on a lot of different levels.
I think that Blade Runner might be one of those movies that the middle is the most appropriate. I remember seeing my dad showing me the original trilogy pretty young, and it hits all of the right notes for that kid, like spaceships, gun battle, everything's awesome. And then, I still obviously love it. I'm on a podcast that's basically about Star Wars and Batman, so clearly it worked pretty well. I think that maybe it's almost like I think there could be a segment to this where it's like show them Star Wars and then get them a little bit older, and then I think Blade Runner might be in that intermediate phase. Like, it's not Requiem for a Dream. You don't need a lot of, it's not Memento, right? You have to work at it. But like that intermediate phase, might be the appropriate, like, you got a little understanding about how stuff works. Because in the book, as I push my glasses up my face, in the book is basically a morality play about how humans interact with humans, and by extension, these androids and how everything else works. And like, the movie does some of that, but obviously not to the same extent the book does. But to a, I don't know, like a middle schooler, that probably feels far more
13 years old. 13 years old is probably the right time for that headspace to be explored. And I think that's the bigger reason for this conversation, is because, I'm a dad, so I'm starting to think about these things. Like you said, Star Wars hits all the right notes for kids from ages, 3 to 10. So it's like there's this huge wide range of times when that stuff can hit. But to Dave's point, if you watch Blade Runner too young, it's not going to hit. If you watch it too old, it's not going to hit. And I think there are films like this in culture where it's like they stand the test of time, they're compelling stories, they make sense in the fabric of, cult movie-dom, but there's a right age to watch them. And that's what I think that I want to explore with you guys.
To some degree, I definitely agree. I think there's also there are a lot of the classics, quote unquote, that you really either have to work to watch. I think the first time that I watched the Maltese Falcon?
Yes.
Just make a movie up?
Isn't the Maltese Falcon, yes.
Oh, God. All of a sudden I thought that I had said, like, the Millennium Falcon, and I was like, that's a ship, not a movie. The first time I watched that, like, it was like, this is a very good movie, right? Like, this is important. I want to watch this. And I think I was probably in high school, maybe somewhere in that neighborhood. And I'd seen Casablanca. I really liked it. Humphrey Bogart is a badass. He carries a .45, kisses the pretty girl, and smokes a lot of cigarettes. Like, that works pretty well for a high schooler. Like, I'm going to grow up to be Humphrey Bogart. And I just couldn't ever get into it. It was very similar to the first time I watched Citizen Kane, where you have, however many decades of precedence weighing down on your shoulders when you watch this movie. And I guess unless you come to it naturally, I don't know how, because I like that movie, and I definitely understand intellectually why it's important, but I also watched it in the context of a class, which I think really can hinder your enjoyment. It can benefit your understanding, but I think it definitely hinders your enjoyment. And I think, Dave, you've run into that before.
Yeah, and I think taking film classes in college, or I took 2 animation classes in college, and I think animation was great because I wasn't exposed to that world at all, so I got to experience a whole bunch of new things, whereas taking film classes, I had already considered myself like a mini movie buff by the time I was 18, and that's a terrible context in which to try and watch, for example, North by Northwest for the first time, which is where I saw that movie for the first time, or, for example, Citizen Kane, which is where I saw that movie for the first time. I think it's difficult because, one, you're a dipshit your freshman year of college.
Or your sophomore, junior, or senior.
Yeah. I specifically was a dipshit my freshman year of college, where I thought I had shit figured out. And I think it's partially that, but it's also partially, and I think we've all talked about this without saying, is that you're watching these movies out of a sense of duty. Like, I am a movie guy. I need to see this movie, and I'm judging myself on whether or not I like it.
I have an expectation to go, wow, that was amazing.
Right, and those are almost impossible expectations to grasp, where, like, I saw, for example, 2001: A Space Odyssey for the first time, and I got to the last third, and it completely fell apart, and I really appreciated the way it was shot, and I really appreciated what he had to do with practical effects that wasn't possible because there wasn't the same level of CGI. I really appreciated it, But by the time we got to the last third, I was like, God damn it! 1, this movie needs to be over, and 2, what the fuck just happened? And I really wanted to like it badly. But it's the same thing where it's like such high expectations
of expectations.
Yeah, you're stuck.
Yeah, you've exactly nailed it. It's this. You go through 20 years of life or whatever, and you go, man, I really like movies, and then you start appreciating the history of movies. But it's like you're past the point where you can organically stumble upon good movies.
Yeah.
It's like every good movie that's ever been made has already been kind of just in your peripheral understanding of Hollywood. And so I think that's the thing that it's almost like I want to write a script for like anyone that by the time they're 25 likes movies, needs to start watching these movies at this age to get to that point. And that's a daunting task, but I think that's the key to all this is like, you stumble upon a movie like Alien when you're 14 years old, and you're like, holy crap, dude! Like,
flips all the switches.
Yeah. So that's where I'm curious to go with this, and if you guys will indulge me, what I thought might be fun, I'll just pull up a random list on the internet, IMDb, and go through, the top, so many movies. We can say if we've seen them, and then say, what did it hit with you or not, and then what age were you when it hit? Because I think that at least gives a little context to that. Are you guys up for that?
Let's do it. Fire that shit up.
All right, so I'll start with each one if that's cool. So I got an IMDb top 100 greatest movies. We're not going to do that full list for this podcast, but we'll go for a little bit. The Godfather
from number
1.
Oh, God.
Oh, come on.
All right, work up from number 1.
Number 1, The Godfather. On IMDb is the number 1 of the top 100 greatest movies. I'm good with that. The Godfather I saw probably when I was 18 years old for the first time, which might be a little bit late, but it still really worked for me, and I had every bit of appreciation that I think necessary, even though I already knew I was supposed to like that movie. So that one definitely hit at that age for me. Dave?
I think I was in the 14, 15, 16 range. This is one of those where I saw the movies out of order and it didn't matter for me. I don't remember what channel they showed on all the time. It was when I was a kid. It was probably too young for Spike, which they show on all the time now.
No, TBS, where they were spliced. TBS. Yeah.
Okay, so I saw Godfather Part 3 first, and I saw the middle section of that movie, and I mean it was as awful as everyone remembers Godfather Part 3 to be, but it got me to look over to my dad's movie collection, and there was the 3-part VHS set. Nice. So I went and started with that. Obviously, if there's a 3-part box set of VHSs, and my dad took the time to buy it and put it on the shelf. There were only a couple of those. We had Star Wars, we had Indiana Jones, we had The Godfather, and those were my trilogies. So yeah, it hit for me there.
So I've seen it. I have a similar with Dave. I actually saw 2 before I saw 1, which
that kind of works almost better, right?
Yeah, one became the prequel to my 2, and I actually went out and. The deal with my parents to let me check 1 out of the library was I had to read the book first, because my parents were cruel and loving all at the same time. So, and I really liked that, and it started a pattern for me for the rest of my life. So, honestly, I think I probably saw it in that like 12 to 13 range. So, yeah, it hit all of my buttons were pressed.
Cool. So, I mean, maybe the takeaway there is, teenage years for The Godfather, because there's some heavy stuff in there.
Gangster movies young.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
Or just it's the greatest movie of all time, and it's probably gonna hit.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah.
Number 2 on this list, kind of a surprise. I mean, certainly in the pop culture world, it makes sense, but I guess I didn't expect to see it on the list. It's The Shawshank Redemption. So I think you can sit at home on a Saturday in the fall and just find 7, viewings of this movie.
Absolutely.
On 4 different channels.
Yeah. That said, it took me until probably, that movie came out when I was 11, but I don't think I saw it until I was maybe 16, 17 years old, and of course it hit at that point. But I think there's a big window when that movie really makes sense just because there's such a human element of it. So
you're also trapped in high school, so
yeah,
right.
I was 14, 15 when I saw this one, and it was a recommendation from my uncle that I really admire in terms of a movie buff. So it was going to hit either way. I was going to force myself to like it if I didn't, even though, great film.
I saw it way later. I was definitely in college by the time I saw Shawshank. Like, the joke about laying around on a Saturday and watching Shawshank was already a thing on the internet by the time I actually watched it.
Wow.
And I don't like this movie.
Wow.
Whoa.
I mean, I think, no, that's not true. Like, there are a lot of movies I'm viscerally angry about. I am not viscerally angry. I get it. It's good. It's fine. It doesn't hit that way with me, and I think this might be the great example of saw it way too late for it to have kind of impact.
Yeah.
Because I watched it and I was like, oh, that was good.
Yeah.
That was fine.
Yeah.
Like, all right. I feel the same way about that film as I do The Green Mile. I like them both. They're good movies.
It is one of those movies that used to be in my top 10 when I still cared about what other people thought about my top 10.
Sure.
And now my top 10 is just, what are my top 10
I feel like it's also a gateway movie because it's not just like guns or tits. And so a lot of people, when they start to like branch out into like more cerebral stuff, like that ends up on lists because it's like, this is a thinking man's movie. Reality, it's not. It's still good, but it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe I'm just stuck in some juvenile
well, you saw
world where that is a thinking man's movie.
And I'm in the place where Blade Runner is an incredible think piece.
Yeah. So that speaks to the whole point of the topic, right? The third movie on here is Schindler's List. That's a movie I saw probably when I was like 12, 13, and I watched it super late at night with my brother. That's a long film. I think we started watching it at like 10 o'clock at night, so I was up into the wee hours of the morning, and that was a heavy piece of, film for me to take in. I certainly appreciated the artistry of the film, and that was before I think I even had the high school context of world history and stuff to fully appreciate what it was. So I think I saw it a little too early, but it was probably good for me to see a little too early just on the cultural impact that event had.
I watched that one about 3 years ago, and it was one of those out of duty. And it really does feel like it is the movie equivalent of eating your vegetables. You know what I mean? Like you have to do it because it's good for you. But I don't think I would ever on a Saturday flip on Schindler's List.
No.
I don't think by choice I would watch it again.
Right.
But I appreciate how good it is, how well
made.
Right.
I think I probably watched it in high school for this first time because I'd kind of been in the similar way. I'd been putting it off because I knew it was good and knew it was impactful, but I also knew the background of it. And just, you're sitting down for a long, big dose of the Holocaust. Like that's tough to get through. So,
kind of punishing.
Yeah, but that said, it's also a movie that I probably watch once every 5 years, just because it's done so well, and it's that's a subject matter that they treat. They do it perfectly. As far as I'm concerned, we don't really need another movie like that because that one has done it. It is over. Like beat Schindler's List. So that's one of those where that's very much. I get the analogy of eating your vegetables. That said, I think it also is just it's such a good movie on its own. Like aside from just like needing to buckle down and commit yourself to watching that movie. It also is a brilliant piece of filmmaking, too, that you can imagine making a black and white movie in, I don't know, whatever year it came out in.
94. 93, excuse me, 93.
And, a black and white movie that's, 3 and change long, that's still watched on the regular. Like, that's an incredible piece of filmmaking.
Yeah. All right, what's next?
Yeah, I don't want to dwell on that one, but I do kind of see where just because of the historical impact of that event and the effectiveness of that film it does have its place.
I'm not sure there is a right age for that one.
Right. The next film on here is one I admittedly have not seen but know a lot about just because it's so important in the culture of film, Raging Bull. So I'll throw it to you guys to talk.
I haven't actually. I'm in the same boat. I haven't seen that one either.
Okay.
I always had it in the back of my head as the Prestige Rocky, and I was like, I've seen Rocky. I never really got around to it.
It's Scorsese. I mean, there's every reason for me to sit and watch that movie.
Your analogy was Prestige Rocky.
I know that is really a juvenile thing where it's like, how do I put this movie into context? It's better Rocky.
Yeah. I'm going to go ahead and dissuade you of any notion of that. I probably watched it when I was like 14 or 15, which as an angry suburban kid who had no reason to be angry, really just resonated with me. I think I've also watched Scarface for the first time around this time, so you can kind of see what headspace I was in. But again, it's a similar thing, the choice of black and white in an era where we didn't have to make black and white anymore and it not to be a gimmick or a shtick.
Yeah.
1980.
To be able to encompass like emotion that way and everything. Yeah. I think there is a proper age for this one, though. I definitely think it is in that teenage angst period. Before that, I just wouldn't show it to a kid any younger than that. And older, I don't know. I don't know if you watched it now. I'd actually be very curious to see what your reaction would be.
So maybe that's homework for us, Dave. I mean, I think if it lands this high on the list, it's Scorsese. I feel like we ought to force ourselves to watch.
I don't feel like I need to talk you into watching Raging Bull.
No, absolutely not. No, but Scorsese is an interesting director because he is one of those who it hit me too early. I saw Goodfellas too early, and I was like, what the fuck is this? Yeah. And I understood it as like a angry teenager liking Joe Pesci's character.
You want to watch Joe Pesci pissed off another guy.
Right, exactly. So, and then, with the smash zooms and all of the Scorsese trademarks, I was like, what the fuck is this movie I'm watching?
Yeah.
So I think that was another reason why it got put off for so long.
Next up is Casablanca, and while I have not watched it fully, and I hate to admit that, it is a film that I've DVR'd every chance I've gotten, as well as kind of forced myself to start watching. I have never gotten all the way through, and I understand its impact on kind of Hollywood, and that's where I wonder if it's just like, I know too much about the film and am too old to actually take it in. But go ahead, you guys.
I saw it. That was one that I saw in a film class, and I couldn't properly enjoy it for that reason. I think anything that was made in black and white because you literally could not make it in color is difficult for me to get through just on principle. It's not because it's black and white. It's because it's a different kind of...
it's old.
Well, it's a different kind of movie. It's a different... Yeah. Things are scripted differently. They don't push things as far. They don't go to the edge. It's not as provocative in the same way. It's provocative in its own ways, but it's difficult for me to push back that far into movie history. I think Citizen Kane kind of hit me in place. Movies like that.
Everything you just said is why I love Casablanca so much.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't do it. It doesn't put it on the face. It's the same reason that I love Hitchcock. Because he's one of the greatest horror directors who very rarely ever shows a body. He doesn't need to make his shit scary. And it was, to Brent's point, like I knew a lot of the tropes. Play It Again, Sam, Start or something, all of like the lines that you know for it, but the context of it is so good. Because I think I probably saw it, I bet it was in high school. So, well long enough to absorb the cultural impact of it before watching it. And the context makes all of that stuff that much better. Like, it's kind of like you're finally in on the joke, right? Like, and the funny thing is that a lot of times that stuff falls flat. Like, you hear something that's in the zeitgeist of culture, and you're like, oh, yeah, I know that. But with Casablanca, it really is being a part of the joke. Like, you get why these lines are repeated so much. So I definitely think that's one. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see someone who didn't, like, if we could get Encino Man to watch it. Without having any of that zeitgeist, that would be awesome, but I don't know how because I think if you show it to a kid who didn't know that, I don't think it would make any sense, but it'd be very interesting to see someone watch that movie without knowing all of the lines and the tropes and everything else.
Yeah. So yeah, that one's kind of an enigma. I mean, would you say that, I like the Encino Man comment, but would you say that's a movie you show a 12-year-old?
I mean, I think so. Yeah.
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 To be fair, I will show a 12-year-old.
Not to compare 12-year-olds to Encino Man. To all of our 12-year-old listeners, I'm not trying to offend you, please.
Correct. 12-year-olds
or compare you to a movie from the early 90s that you've probably never heard of.
And you shouldn't, because it was Brendan Fraser and Pauly
Caveman.
Shore, so please stay away from that. Don't do drugs. Don't watch Brendan Fraser or Pauly Shore movies. You'll be better people in adulthood if you avoid drugs and those movies.
By the way, this is a long-form podcast in which we've spent probably 20 of our 30 minutes talking about Star Wars. It's not a Vine, and no one here is under the age of 15, so we probably don't have any 12-year-old listeners.
Shit, that's a good
Don't limit yourself, Dave. Don't limit yourself.
It's just a problem with format.
I'm just constantly Snapchatting my balls. But they're branded with the hashtag, so I think we're okay. Question mark?
Wait, your balls have an account on Snapchat?
Yeah, Brent, that's what the kids are into.
Yeah.
So that's the top 5 on this list. I certainly think we could spend all night doing it.
And we would.
And we certainly would. But I think that speaks to kind of just the curiosity I have with that subject, and maybe we take another time to really go through and come up with other films that we think are timeless. I think that's a really strong topic of conversation. Movies that you can see when you're 8 versus 20, and they still have the impact. A movie like Wizard of Oz or something comes to mind. But yeah, there's a lot of ground to cover there, and I don't think we need to do it in this podcast. So.
You mean like Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift? Is that what you're talking about? Timeless?
Yeah. My 65-year-old aunt would certainly be into Tokyo Drift just the same way as my 5-year-old, right?
Absolutely.
So this is actually a great crowdsourcing question. I would love to know what crimes were committed by parents or older siblings on you. Hit us up at PopNerdery and let us know what crimes your family members committed by showing you movies entirely too early, either on purpose or just, completely accidentally. My father showing me Silence of the Lambs when I was 8.
I saw. Yeah, I was gonna throw out. I saw The Exorcist at a sleepover when I was 7.
I don't know if that's wrong or not.
It's too early.
This is the type of thing I think about, right? Because the onus kind of falls on parents to determine the right time to show or not to show things. So to piggyback on Toph's question, if you got shown something way too early and your parents are to blame, or you saw a movie that you should have seen at the will of your parents, a little bit too late, let us know about that. Hit us up, again, all the normal spots, Twitter, right there in the comments here for the page for this podcast, and hopefully we'll get a chance to kind of double back on some of those things in future episodes. So I think that kind of wraps this topic up, unless there's something else that people want to add here.
Now let's go ahead and take our last break.
All right, so kind of to wrap up the podcast here, I think we wanted to just talk a little bit about some of the things we're looking forward to. They may not be this week or this month, but just some of the stuff coming up that we're looking to get our hands on. So I know, Dave, you had something you were anxious to kind of tease for us.
Absolutely, because I haven't talked about Star Wars enough. I'm super pumped about bringing my Star Wars love to another form of media. We've talked about movies, we've talked about books, we've talked about comics. I am eagerly awaiting Star Wars Battlefront. By eagerly awaiting, I mean for roughly the last 10 years since the last Battlefront game was released.
Bullshit. You had TIE Fighter. Be cool.
Shut the fuck up about TIE Fighter. This game is going to be outstanding.
PopNerdery on PopNerdery Crime.
This game's going to be outstanding. You can play as Jedi. It's got next-gen graphics. You can play as pretty much everything. The fucking Millennium Falcon and Boba Fett's Slave One are going to be in the game.
Can I play as an Ewok?
You know what? I'm going to write to them and make sure that you can play as an Ewok.
I would like Ewok as a playable class.
You're going to be Wicket, all right? Isn't Wicket the one who dies, or is he the sad one that's sad about the one who dies?
No, neither. He's the main Ewok that befriends Leia in the jungle and wants a snack and thinks her hat is scary. That's Wicket.
Holy shit.
I thought they killed all the... I thought that's what the celebration was about, was just a cleansing of the planet of Ewoks. I watched that scene all wrong.
The planet wasn't a planet. It's a moon named Endor. Don't make me...
Execute Order 66.
There are multiple moons. Don't step to me. Don't come up to me like that.
Motherfucker. All right, here we go. So Star Wars Battlefront. The beta for this game happens in October. There's still not a specific date, but they announced today that it is open to everyone. You don't have to order the deluxe edition or get in line for registration. There's going to be an online beta, which you can play almost every mode. This game, in addition to the recently released Batman Arkham Knight, are two of the reasons why I opted to buy a next-gen system, even though I'm pushing 30. So I couldn't be more excited for this game.
So who's going to Dave's house on Friday? Oh, the game hasn't come out then. Okay. All the clips I've seen online are pretty damn exciting. I mean, for anybody that grew up on Star Wars, like just reinserting yourself into that world, even if it has nothing to do with the story, it has no canon impact. It
does.
Fun as
it
hell.
does, Brent.
Oh, okay.
Canon impact.
Okay.
So in the trailer, the Chewie We're Home trailer, as we all call it colloquially,
obviously,
the Chewie We're Home trailer. You know how her little speeder passes that downed the down Star Destroyer?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
That is going to happen. That battle is going to happen within this game.
Oh,
so
shit.
you're gonna see stuff that is canon within this game, and from what I understand, you're supposed to be able to play missions from across the original trilogy, which is
like you can do in TIE Fighter.
Sure. Sure, but since it's a choose-your-own-adventure and you don't know how that battle actually turns out,
we call that a sandbox.
Actually canon. But yeah, you'll play in that sandbox, so I can appreciate that. And good point by you, David. But yeah, that's definitely an exciting thing, and being on new planets before we actually get to visit those worlds in the movies, etc., is a smart thing by Disney and Lucasfilm, as if we haven't jerked them off enough tonight.
One more time.
Yeah. So similar, it's a ways out here, but one thing I'm mildly excited about, and I kind of hate myself for being mildly excited about it, but smart on them by setting it up in a way that allows for this type of thing to happen. I watched the first and second seasons of American Horror Story on FX and loved them, and have since drug myself through the last couple seasons, not really enjoying them, but there's enough intrigue with the latest version of that franchise coming out. There's the American Horror Story Hotel season coming out.
Is that the one with Gaga?
Yeah, as much as I'm not a big fan of Gaga,
you signed up for that shit just because of Gaga. Don't lie.
Right. I can appreciate her place in this world, if that makes sense.
It's crazy. She's crazy. What's not to like?
Yes. And it could, and that's part of the reason why I'm intrigued, because if it's just this flaming pile of garbage, that might be kind of interesting to find out quickly. Well, but I could also kind of see it working, just because if she's reined in and it's just this drama, creepy weirdness going on with good writing, like it has been in the past, I could see it working. I'm not banking on it. It'll only be DVR'd, and I won't get to it within the first couple days after it airs, I'm guessing. But I'm mildly excited about it, so that's something coming up for me.
I mean, if it's good, we win, and if it's hilarious and terrible, I still win.
Still kind of win, exactly.
I'm fine with this one way or the other.
Exactly. And that, like, what continues to impress me is they keep really good talent on. If you're not super familiar with the series, the creators are Brad Falchuk and Ryan Murphy. Ryan Murphy had a pretty good track record before he even came on to create American Horror Story, having done Nip Tuck and Glee and other things along some pretty notable heritage. So I think the fact that Angela Bassett and Kathy Bates and Jessica Lange and Lang and some of the cast that's kind of come on over the past few years, they keep coming back. And I think when you have an opportunity to just bail at the end of every season, but you don't. Not to say that every good actor always picks good projects to be involved in, but I think that's kind of a cool thing. So, that's just something that's on my radar for sure.
Toph, are you looking forward to anything, or are you just screaming into the void?
I do a lot of that, usually about the hours between 8 a.m. and 11 p.m.
Anything that you're reading right now you got charged up about, Toph?
So, yeah, actually, I'm in the middle of 100 Objects That Define the First World War, which is a global conflict I don't know enough about. And the way this is presented is fantastic. It actually chronologically takes an item and explains its context in the war, giving the grander picture through like actual individual pieces. No one's gonna read it, but yeah, I'm really excited about it and I like it a lot. So that's
like historical artifacts.
So like the first couple are like there's a first class passenger ticket for the Lusitania and like Franz Ferdinand's bloodstained jacket and one of the Prussian helmets and so I'm through the first like 25 objects and we haven't even started open conflict yet, which is awesome.
Are you talking about Franz Ferdinand the band?
Did you know that they were killed to start? Literally, someone was like, "Take me home, fuck you." Everyone dies, and all of Europe's in a shitstorm now. It was weird.
Yeah, that bloodstained jacket, man.
Started against Franz Ferdinand.
Right.
So, if any of the listeners questioned our nerdery claims, I think that basically nails it home right there. That brings us to the end of the show. I definitely want to thank all the listeners for tuning into this episode of Pop Nerdery. Stay tuned for more, and as a reminder, join the conversation in the comments section of the podcast posts here on PopNerdery.com. Please rate and review us on iTunes to help out the show, and let us know what you want us talking about. Let us know where you disagreed, where you agreed, etc. We definitely want that dialogue to keep going.
You guys can find me at Dave Foltz on Twitter.
You can find me at The Hospital Ball on the Twitters.
And my Twitter is GoHorse88. Feel free to hit us up there. But certainly we will be checking out the comments, and we will look forward to everyone tuning in next time. Hey,
Don't
guys.
follow Brent, guys. Don't follow Brent. Don't do it.
Do it.
I'll see you guys in the comments.
We'll see everybody soon.
Love you.
Finger guns.